Hello everyone, this is Susan Gerbic from the GSoW project. One of the really interesting side effects of writing a Wikipedia page from scratch is that several of my editors have reported developing a great affection for their subject. We spend so many hours working on a page creation that it's easy to see them as a whole person. We try to find out most everything we can on the subject in order to be able to write a complete, comprehensive account of their life, while having to also prove using secondary notable sources that the person meets the Wikipedia notability requirements, which are tough. Even when we've worked on pages that are on the opposite side of the scientific skepticism coin, you still usually think you understand where their thinking went wrong, and you still end up liking them. If you could sit down with them over lunch, you probably would do so, and the conversation would be terrific. So I want to tell you about someone who I knew almost nothing about when I started to research, and ended up with a kind of skeptic crush on, someone who is very notable, known, but unknown. Let's go back to the late 1995. Words written on paper were the norm. The internet was not a thing yet. Two friends who bonded over a love of tabletop games were hanging out, and one noticed that the other had an issue of Skeptical Inquirer magazine laying around. Turns out that both were subscribers and read it from cover to cover when each issue came out. The two people were Perry DeAngelis and Stephen Novella. Perry one day showed the back cover to Steve and said, "Look at this list of skeptical organizations. There's no group in Connecticut. We should start a group." And that was the birth of the Connecticut Skeptical Society. This is the kind of person Perry was, a thinker of large thoughts, an idea man, and Steve is great at the detail and logistics. The Connecticut group eventually joined with the New England and the New Hampshire groups and became what we now know as the New England Skeptical Society, or NES. The NES investigated claims of the paranormal, ghosts, cults, UFOs, and a lot more. One of Perry's favorite investigations was when they went to visit Ed and Lorraine Warren. You know them from the Amityville Horror and Conjuring fame. These people see demons everywhere. The NES toured their haunted basement museum that held items that were more Halloween-oriented than demon-like. You might remember the Ricky Lake TV show in the late 1990s. It was one of these daytime talk shows that would showcase the odd and crazy in order to gain viewers. Steve is on one show that had vampires. One psychic vampire stated she could drain people's minds. And Perry sprang up with his arms spread out wide, shouting, "Drain me!" That must have been hilarious. The vampire says, "It does not work in public." And Perry later wrote that he believes that psychic couldn't drain a sink. In Perry's early 20s, he used to compete in the local demolition derby, which is when participants would take junk cars into an arena and slam them into each other, kind of like a large bumper car event. The goal was to be the last car still moving. Perry created the persona Dr. Demo and would dress up like a doctor and hand out surgical masks with his autograph. He would stand up on top of the car yelling to get the audiences riled up. If you know your skeptic history, you know that NES created the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast, known as the SGU. It aired 1 week after Skepticality podcast did, and neither group knew of each other, but this is just the beginning of podcasting, so it's very early on. Perry's health wasn't great, and in 2000 he went into the hospital to have his gallbladder removed. The surgery was much more difficult than normal, and he nearly died. After he was home and feeling better, he wrote a report up on the experience he had. Carbon dioxide built up in his blood made the aliens come for him. Yep, he suffered through several days of knowing that the nurses and family visitors were actually space aliens that were trying to operate on him. They had to keep him strapped down to keep him from ripping out the IV and leaving the hospital. He later learned that he was suffering from ICU psychosis, and he experienced aliens because he had been fascinated by that culture of UFOs and alien abductions all his life. If he had had a different culture, maybe raised with witches or demons, then his delirium would have had different characters. This experience taught Perry to be sympathetic to those experiencing the terror of paranoia. Perry continued to suffer from health problems, but managed to participate in most of the first 100 SGU shows. There are many Perryisms floating around the internet, and I do have a snippet of them located on his Wikipedia page for your listening pleasure. They had a long-running joke on the show about who is tougher, birds or monkeys, which led them to one of the best Perry quotes ever. "Any monkey worth his salt would give any bird a beak flip." In August 2007, while in the hospital, Perry died from complications of scleroderma. Steve Novella just happened to be in the room checking on him when it happened, and Steve recounts this in detail during my interview with him that you will find in the Perry DeAngelis Wikipedia page. In 2009, 2 years after Perry's death at the age of 43, Ness, along with the New York City Skeptics, created the popular Nexus Conference. This conference started out as a tribute to Perry. The SGU gets emails all the time from listeners who start at the beginning of the recordings and love Perry. As they work their way through the shows, they discover that Perry died and are devastated. These people then write to the SGU and grieve. Steve told me in our interview that Perry's popularity was easy to understand. He has presence. The power of his personality went into everything he did and every relationship he had. As big as Perry's presence was in our lives, that is the size of the hole he will leave by his absence. One more interesting story that happened right here in Skepticality. Derek interviewed Steve Novella about them both celebrating their 10 years of podcasting, and Derek mentioned that he'd met Perry at a conference. Steve said, "You've never met Perry. He never made it to a single skeptic conference. His health would not let him attend one." Derek said he was really sure he'd met Perry in person, and I know how he feels. I feel like I've met him also. I wish I had, but I feel privileged to have written his Wikipedia page, to keep his very important contributions to our movement alive. We should not forget him. We need many more Perry DeAngelises out there, people with big thoughts and with a giant heart. He inspires me. I interviewed both Steve and fellow SGU rogue Evan Bernstein in order to gain enough material about Perry to write the Wikipedia page. If you'd like to listen to those interviews, which details his life, you can find the links on Perry's Wikipedia page. If you'd like to join my GSoW team and find yourself learning about amazing people while researching them, please visit our GSoW YouTube account and listen to me interview other editors so you'll know what to expect. Our secret cabal is located on Facebook, so you'll have to have an account with Facebook in order to participate. Open up a Wikipedia account and then write to me at gsowteam@gmail.com. Let me know you're ready to start training, and please help us write the history of our amazing community. Thank you.